Hello, welcome to netvn. In this video I show how to install macOS 13 on desktop or laptop. Here I have a computer running Windows 11 and I am going to install macOS 13 on it. First of all, on Windows 11 you use the CPU-Z software to determine the type of processor you use. CPU-Z is a free software that helps you to identify hardware information such as processor, memory, hard drive and more. My computer uses a processor called Coffee Lake. Now I will create the corresponding installer for it. Here are the download links for the files needed for the macOS installer. Here are the files to install for both desktop and laptop. Because I install macOS for the desktop, so I will look for the corresponding files. In the desktop folder I found a folder for processors called Coffee Lake. You download the files that correspond to your processor. This is a compressed file, so you need to unzip it. These are the files after extracting. In the folder named DFI there are two subfolders named boot and OC. There's one more file you need to download. I put the path of these files in the description. There is only one file here and you download it. This file is common to all different types of processors. And this is also a compressed file, so you need to decompress it. To create a bootable installer you need a USB drive of at least 2 GB in size. Here I use a USB drive of size 8 GB. With this USB drive you formatted it as FAT32. If your USB drive is larger than 32 GB, then you will have a bit of a hard time trying to format it as FAT32. Therefore, I recommend you to use a USB drive less than 32 GB in size. After formatting the USB drive, copy the files prepared in the previous step. You copy the folder named DFI to the USB drive. This folder helps you to boot the macOS operating system and it has subfolders OC and boot. After finishing copying the folder named DFI, you copy the folder named recovery.boot. This folder helps you to install macOS 13 on your desktop or laptop. Make sure to copy both folders named DFI and recovery.boot. This is my macOS installer and the files on it. On my computer there is a hard drive with Windows 11 installed. On this drive there is a partition named DFI. This is the boot partition. In the next step you will customize it to boot to macOS. One more thing to note is that you plug your USB stick into a USB 2.0 port to install macOS. There are 4 USB 3.0 ports on my computer, but I don't use it to install macOS. Instead I use one of 2 USB 2.0 ports to install macOS 13. You should not use the USB 3.0 port when installing because it will cause an unbootable error. Now go to the UEFI BIOS and set up your computer to boot from the USB drive. You choose macOS Recovery to start installing the operating system. You choose the language when installing. Here I choose English. Next you format the partition before installing macOS. Because the partition is running Windows 11 it is formatted as NTFS. I choose the partition named OS and format it. To install macOS you format it as APFS. As mentioned in the previous step, I give the partition a name so that it is easy to identify it when formatting and installing. After completing the partition format, you install macOS 13 on it. I selected the partition named OS and started to install the operating system. Make sure your computer is connected to the internet to download the installer. It will take about 1 hour to complete the installation. During the installation, your computer automatically reboots several times before it completes. And here are the settings for the first boot. You will be asked to create an administrative account for this computer. You write down the password to log into macOS next time. For macOS to detect the type of keyboard you are using, follow the instructions and press the key next to the Shift key. I recommend you to use Google Chrome for a better web surfing experience. There is a problem that needs to be solved, that when you remove the USB drive, your computer cannot boot. So what to do? You will copy the boot folder from the USB drive to the hard drive. As mentioned in the previous section, the boot directory is named DFI. To be able to access the boot partition on the hard drive, you use the Mount DFI tool. You download this tool and extract it by double-clicking on the downloaded file. Then you open the file named mountdfi.command. Mount DFI requires you to install Python before use. You just need to press Y to install Python. You will be asked to enter the admin password set up in the previous step to install Python. You choose the hard drive to mount the boot partition. Here the macOS installation hard drive is named OS. After the mount is complete, you can access the hard drive's boot partition. In this partition there are Windows 11 boot files, so it can't help you to boot macOS. So you delete it and replace them with the macOS boot files. You go to the folder named DFI on the USB drive and copy the folder named boot and OC. You paste them in the boot partition of the hard drive. So on your hard drive there are now boot files suitable for macOS 13. You remove the USB drive and restart the computer. Your computer has only one boot option, the hard drive. You access the UEFI BIOS and set up the computer to boot from the hard drive. Here you choose Reset NVRAM and Reboot. In UEFI BIOS there will be a new boot option called Open Core. You set up the computer to boot from Open Core. You should see your computer booting to macOS without a USB drive. I have finished showing how to install macOS 13. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and help me 600,000 subscriptions. If your computer has an audio error, follow these steps to fix it. Good luck.